Learned helplessness. Why some people stop trying even when they can succeed. Why do some people stop trying, even when the opportunity to succeed is right in front of them? Why do others stay trapped in toxic relationships, dead-end jobs, or cycles of failure? Not because they can't escape, but because they've come to believe escape isn't possible. The answer lies in a powerful psychological phenomenon called learned helplessness. First identified in the 1960s, learned helplessness shows us how repeated failure, or the belief that we lack control, can condition us to stop trying altogether, even when success is within reach. This article explores the origins of learned helplessness, how it affects your mind and behavior, and, most importantly, how you can break free from its grip. What is learned helplessness? Learned helplessness is a mental state in which a person who has experienced repeated failure or trauma begins to believe that they are powerless to change their situation, and as a result, they stop trying. It's not laziness. It's not a lack of desire. It's a psychological survival response. When we've been conditioned to believe our actions don't matter, we begin to shut down motivation, effort, and hope. The result? People stay stuck, not because they have no way out, but because they've learned to believe no way out exists. The famous experiment that changed psychology. In 1967, psychologists Martin Seligman and Stephen Maier conducted a now famous experiment using dogs to test this concept. They divided the dogs into 3 groups. Group 1. Dogs that were placed in a harness but released after a short time. No shocks, no stress. Group 2. Dogs that received electric shocks, but had a button they could press with their nose to stop the shocks. Group 3. Dogs that received the same shocks, but had no way to stop them. Their shocks ended only when the dogs in Group 2 pressed the button. What happened next was astonishing. When all the dogs were later placed in a box where they could easily escape a mild shock by jumping over a low wall, Groups 1 and 2 quickly learned to escape. But Group 3, the dogs that had learned they had no control, didn't even try. They just laid down and accepted the shock. They had learned to be helpless. This experiment had massive implications for human psychology. It helped explain why people often stay in painful or dysfunctional situations, not because they enjoy it but because they've learned that trying doesn't help. Real-life examples of learned helplessness. Learned helplessness shows up in everyday life in subtle and heartbreaking ways. Students who repeatedly fail tests may stop studying altogether, believing they're just bad at school. Employees who've been ignored or criticized by past managers may stop speaking up, even when they have great ideas. Victims of abuse may stay in toxic relationships because past efforts to leave were blocked or punished. People with depression often stop seeking help, feeling that nothing will ever improve. In each case, the person could change their situation, but their mind has convinced them it's useless to try. How learned helplessness affects the brain. Repeated exposure to failure, trauma, or helpless situations doesn't just affect your emotions, it rewires your brain. Studies show that learned helplessness impacts the brain's amygdala heightens fear and emotional response. Prefrontal cortex reduces motivation, problem-solving, and decision-making. Dopamine system lowers reward sensitivity, making success feel less satisfying or attainable. In other words, learned helplessness turns your brain into a system that resists growth, until you break the cycle. The link between learned helplessness and mental health. Learned helplessness plays a major role in conditions like depression, feeling like nothing you do matters; anxiety, fear of trying because of past failure; low self-esteem, constantly doubting your worth and ability; burnout, emotional exhaustion after repeated setbacks or mistreatment. It creates a loop where failure leads to hopelessness, which leads to inaction, which leads to more failure. But the loop can be broken. How to overcome learned helplessness. The good news? Learned helplessness is just that, learned. And what is learned can be unlearned. 1. Recognize the pattern. The first step is awareness. Ask yourself, have I stopped trying in certain areas of life? Do I believe change is possible for others, but not for me? Recognizing these thought patterns is the key to disrupting them. 2. Start small wins. Create situations where you can control the outcome. Set easy goals. Celebrate small achievements. Track progress visually. Small wins rebuild belief in your ability to make change. 3. Change your environment. Surround yourself with people who support growth, not stagnation. Seek feedback and inspiration. The right environment can help rewire helpless patterns into hopeful ones. 4. Use positive self-talk. Replace "I can't" with "I'm learning to." Shift "nothing ever works" to "some things haven't worked yet." Language changes perception. And perception creates possibility. 5. Get professional support. Therapists trained in cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, can help you identify limiting beliefs and reframe them into empowering ones. Final thoughts: you're not stuck, you're conditioned. Learned helplessness is not your fault. It's your brain's response to prolonged disappointment or trauma. But it's not permanent. With the right mindset, support, and small consistent action, you can unlearn helplessness and take back your agency. The truth is, you are far more capable than your past experiences have allowed you to believe. Sometimes the only thing standing between you and success isn't talent or opportunity, it's the false belief that trying doesn't matter. Break that belief and everything changes. You are not powerless. You are powerful, and now you know how to reclaim it.